You're It. I'm Amanda Malcolm, and you're listening to You're It Girl, a podcast focused on you and what propels you. Because that past, it does not define you. Your time is now, and you're it, girl. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to You're It, Girl. Today, we have a guest all the way from NYC. His name is Jeremy. Jeremy, thank you for agreeing to come on the podcast today. I know what time is it over there?
It's 1:45.
It's 1:45. Yeah, we're 3 hours in the time frame. So my good friend, Phil Parada, connected me with you. He is good friends with two very good friends of mine named Adam and Heather. Most incredible humans in the entire world. And so through all of us, we've all become connected. Phil listens to the podcast. Heather listens to the podcast. And they said that you had a story to share. And this is actually a landmark day because this podcast is called You're It Girl. And you are the first man on the You're It Girl podcast. And we're going to talk about something that is a little bit controversial, which is sex trafficking. It's a controversial and eye-opening topic, really. And it's something that you've seen with your own eyes through real life experience. So I'll have you give everybody your background. But before I do that, this is Jeremy Benjamin. He is a husband of 26 years, father of 2. You have a son that is 24 and a daughter who is 16, correct?
Right.
Yes. And you joined the Army in 1994. Then returned home to Pennsylvania in 2014. You went on tour you did a tour in Korea from 96 to 97, again, 05 to 06. And then you also had 2 deployments in Iraq, correct?
Correct. Yep.
And then you eventually came back to the States and searched for something that kind of fit your personality. And today you are at a nonprofit community mental health facility. And what do you do there?
So I'm the facilities director, maintain our whole series of buildings and maintain contracts for things like the HVAC control, things of that nature, making sure our fleet of cars stay up and running.
And what drew you to the job that you have now?
Truly, this is the neighborhood I grew up in, and I kind of feel like I'm kind of giving back to the neighborhood where I grew up at, working here and taking the large pay cut that I did to leave the auto shop and come and do this.
Oh, that's very cool. Very cool that you're in the town that you grew up in too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. How do your kids like that? That's very cool.
They do, I think, enjoy like when I take them around and show them places like, hey, this is where I went when I was around your age, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Now, what drew you to the Army? How old were you when you went into the Army, when you enlisted? And then what drew you to that as your first career path, really?
Well, I wanted to get into a job that made me immediately viable and like kind of on my own and available to, provide for myself without needing, my parents to help me out.
Sure. Makes sense. And how many years total were you in the Army?
20 years, 3 months.
20 years. Oh my goodness. So you have seen some things and you've been to some amazing places, some crazy places.
Yeah.
And with one of the things that we're going to be talking about today, I know you and I discussed this briefly via text. The Sound of Freedom just came out, and I'm sure many of you listeners have probably seen it. If you haven't, definitely watch it. It really sheds light on the subject of sex trafficking and the realities of it. This is a $32 billion business, human trafficking. And with human trafficking, there's not just sex trafficking, but there's also, work and things like that are involved. So this is a huge industry. And one of the reasons why the sex trafficking topic is, or one of the reasons why sex trafficking is such a huge business is because it, unlike drugs, where drugs can be sold once for consumption, sex can be sold and consumed multiple times within an evening. So this is why this business is so incredibly huge. So when you were in the Army,
Yeah.
What was your first experience where you noticed something like this that was going on, and where were you?
Uh, I guess so. The first time that I noticed it, it took time to really notice what was actually going on. So I was I was up north at Camp Stanley, which is a small city in South Korea called Uijeongbu, and so I had a day where, I didn't have much going on during the day, and I said, hey, I'm going to kind of like, just kind of run around and explore and check this place out. And it was probably around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And I go into this bar. I figured, I'd do a little day drinking, have some fun, and look around. And uh, all of a sudden, like these ladies come out of the back, and they're all like in the mirror in the back of the bar, like doing their hair and stuff. And I'm like, is this something that people usually do before they get to work? I don't know. I didn't. And it went on like that. Was like that's what happened in the beginning of the day. And later on, weeks and weeks later, you come in there towards the regular business hours when the business was picked up, and you go in the bar and you sit down, and the lady says, buy me a juice. And you're like, well, that's kind of weird, just getting you want me to buy you a juice? I don't get it. And the guy that's with me, he explains to me that, like, you buy her the juice and she sits with you, and basically, like, she's your waitress. And they had already trained us on the there is sex trafficking here. Don't become a part of it. Don't partake in any of the barbershops, any of the massage parlors, any of that stuff, because that's mostly where all that stuff went on. And I didn't see any sex things going on at this place. And so later on, you're in this place, and it was weeks later, and it was like basically the same time, the same place, and these ladies come in the back. But this time I noticed that and it's hard, but the lady unlocked the door from the inside, and you could see, like, that's where they slept at, and she just let them out into the bar to start getting ready for their work shift that day.
How old would you estimate that these? Were there girls and boys? Just girls?
It was all girls, and they were all Filipino. And I would guesstimate they were probably anywhere between 19 and 25. Okay.
And with most of sex trafficking and your human trafficking victims, I think that a lot of people, 80% of them are generally women and children. The average age usually is somewhere between 12 and 19. And then for boys, it's actually usually much younger, usually under 12 years old, statistically speaking, which is, I know, young ages. So we're talking very young girls, and yes, they're obviously there to work and provide other services.
Right. And like, from what I got at the beginning there was, these girls were basically like the folks that ran whatever facility, whatever bar or whatever, they would run these newspaper ads in the different countries saying, hey, we need an entertainer at our bar. You get free room and board and a paycheck, and you come here. Only to find out when they get there, they get their passport taken, and now they're in debt for whatever their plane ticket and all this stuff was, and they have to pay that back. And so this juice thing was like, however much of that goes to the bar, and then however much it goes to her debt.
And our mutual friend, Phil, he had said that you had some friends that, well, actually, first, this was common knowledge, yes, that this was going
common
on.
Knowledge that this went on, yeah.
And common knowledge within the Army, because they obviously, it's something that was spoken about beforehand. But in this particular bar or restaurant bar, were there other places that you went where you saw it, or was specifically this place? And was it kind of known for that?
Well, so the little facility outside of the little, like, it's like a little town that's attached to the side of the installation where we were stationed. And there was many of these bars. There wasn't just one or two. There was many of them. I would say more than half of them out there. And it was a whole, like we called it the Ville, and it was just a whole little string of little bodegas and cell phone stores and bars and little places to eat and things like that. And it was just like, 2 city blocks wide, 5 city blocks long.
Wow. So you saw this in more than one place.
More than one, yeah, many
More than
different
one
places.
place. And what was the protocol? Obviously, I mean, you're in a different country, so
Right.
there's not really anything that you can. Is there anything that you could do? Anything that you can do? Is there a
I mean,
protocol?
they it's known that it's going on, but I mean, as far as I was like firsthand, had any kind of contact with, there was no sex involved. So you're
Hmm.
thinking like, okay, well, I'm helping her pay off her debt to get back to where she wants to go, or maybe I don't know. I don't know how that really, I don't know how any of that stuff shook out, but I had many of friends that they would go there and they would buy this girl a juice, and they would sit there and they would sit with her and talk with her all night long, and they would do it every night, and eventually they would get involved, and it happened many times. My friends and troops that worked for me, they fell in love with these girls and married them, and had to pay their debt at the bar to get them out of there.
What type of what was the monetary amount? I'm just curious.
Oh yeah, I know,
Do you know? Yeah.
and I know that the one occasion, the one guy, he told me he had to pay a little less than $7,000.
If you think about that, that's crazy. Like that sounds like $7,000 is a lot of money,
Yeah,
and a lot of money to some. But if you really, I mean, $7,000 for a human life, like
right,
that's, I mean, really, that's it. That's all.
right.
Seven
And I
thousand
think,
dollars and she's free. Are you kidding me right now?
my God, yeah, right,
Wow, that's why I remember that. So when Phil and I had talked about this and you coming on and sharing this experience and what you had seen, because these girls were called juice girls, yes?
right.
It's kind
That's
of what
just
they
what they
were
became
referred to.
known as, because every time they sit down next to you, they want you to buy them a juice,
It's such an odd thing. So
isn't it?
I mean, who knows regarding the sex trafficking part, but this is a huge part of human trafficking, is exactly what you just said. So whether their parents are selling them or think that they're putting them into a better situation, or whether they're traveling somewhere and they get their passport taken and now they're basically held against their will
Right,
and forced to work or forced to provide other services. There's a statistic that every 30 seconds someone is sold into human trafficking. And it's this widespread, misunderstood, and something that's not talked about very often. This is the first that I've heard someone in your position share something like this.
right. And I could imagine that maybe folks that were maybe involved with it a little, for a long period of time, might be a little ashamed to say that they were involved with it, or that they knew anything was going on and couldn't do anything about it. I'm unsure.
Yeah, that is, I would imagine that if you met somebody and that was the story behind how you met them, I can't speak for it. You can't speak for it either, but I'm
Right,
sure that might be something that you're a little bit ashamed of talking about. But you have friends that fell in love with girls that this happened to, yes.
right, right.
Especially if you're over there for, I mean, how long were you? This is all in Korea, yes?
Yeah, and so you go there. It's a hardship tour. You go there for one complete year.
It's a long time.
It is. It is. You get to kind of come home at halfway and go back, but yeah, you're there for a year, and these guys, a lot of them, were my age, and they were young and single, and they went there, and they met these girls, and I don't know, maybe there's a little bit of them that was like, hey, I'm rescuing her, or I don't know,
Sure.
and yeah.
Are you still close with anybody that did end up marrying someone from Korea? Or I guess
There's
these girls
one
were
guy I
Filipino,
talk to
but
off
living
and
in
on,
Korea.
but he lives in Japan right now, so it's kind of hard to get a hold of him at times. And the other two that I know of, one of them probably last year took his own life,
Oh, I'm so
and
sorry.
yeah, and the other one, the third friend, I just kind of like lost touch with him over the years.
So three total, three
Three
friends.
three friends that I know of, yeah.
Wow. What What was the reason for you wanting to come on to the podcast to talk about this topic specifically?
Well, I had seen it so much, and I had figured that there would be so much more talked about it by now. And anything that we can do to really, let folks know that this stuff is going on. I'm about it, and I want to let folks know that this is going on.
Is it a surprise to you that that this isn't a topic that's, because it's so widespread, that it's not something that we talk about more often?
It's a gigantic thing. Yeah. I mean, super surprised that there isn't that this isn't a major thing on the news constantly. I don't know why it isn't.
And it happens in the US as well.
Yeah. And now what I can say is, like, my second time there, so I went back, around the 2005 era. Now between those two times, in 2002, the World Cup came to South Korea, right? Mm-hmm. Now that kind of put, I think, the entire country on the world stage. So everybody was seeing what was going on there. So when I came back in 2005, it was still a thing. It was just a whole lot less out there. You know what I mean?
More hidden.
Right. A whole lot more hidden, and
became more secretive.
Right. Because, I believe that, maybe they got pressure put on them, like, hey, this isn't right, what's going on, and you guys need to fix it.
That's fascinating. Just because in the media and in the public, that public space, that does not surprise me.
Right.
The change.
But it was still going on, but it was.
Sure. Now just in more secretive.
Right.
That's wild. It's such a wild thing. Did you see this, The Sound of Freedom? Have you seen it yet?
No, but it is in the plans for this weekend now.
Oh, good. I'm glad. They did a good job with the movie overall. It's a really neat, I shouldn't say neat, but the story behind the main character and the countries that they're in, and it focused a lot on his specific story rather than on the human trafficking piece of it. I thought it touched a little too lightly on the subject, but did at least bring it to the forefront. Although then I think the Barbie movie completely came in and then just overshadowed it, which is so disappointing to me because this is such a huge topic. My very first guest that came on the show when I started the podcast was a victim of familial sex trafficking by her own parents. So it is a topic that sort of launched this podcast. So I really, really appreciate you coming on and shedding some light onto it. And I'm curious what you think about the movie after you do see it. Yeah, please do. So I know this is a heavy thing, so I'm gonna branch off just to focus on you for a quick second, as far as just what is next on the agenda for Jeremy.
Well,
what are you most looking forward to?
I'm looking forward to getting into that spot where, maybe I don't have to have a 9 to 5 anymore, and I can, there was a small thing that I was wanting to do, where I was wanting to do an auto shop, right? Because that's what I have a lot of experience in doing, is mechanics in the auto shop and things. And I wanted to do one where there's a guy out in Oklahoma right now that's doing it also. And I wanted to kind of piggyback off of his business model. Is basically we do the labor for free and you supply the parts for the folks that, just got to get their car up and running again.
Yeah.
I want to get to that point.
That's a great business model.
Yeah.
I love that. And you've got one of your son is 24 and you've got a daughter that she's going to be going off to college. So you'll be an empty nester soon.
Right. Right. And that
for
would
the
be
next,
a thing.
Yes, for the next business endeavor. Business endeavor. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you for coming on. What advice do you have for just the general public in general about this topic?
I guess, don't be afraid to say something when you see it happening. Don't be afraid to say something, and, make sure that it's known. And if you're given pushback at the beginning, push past that, and, just make sure that you don't let it just brush off if you see something like that happening.
Sure. So if you see something, say something. And I think once our eyes are open to this, you become more aware. Yes.
Yeah,
You
definitely.
kind of start to know what to look for. So I think that's the biggest thing. And even just living in Arizona, we're so close to the border. And without going into a bunch of stats, it is something that this is widespread across the entire world and the entire US and obviously in the states that we live in as well. And lots of times you think it may be a father or someone with their own child, but it could be someone that is, I don't want to put anybody on high alert or alarm here, but just to be aware of your surroundings, anything that feels uncomfortable.
Right. Absolutely.
And if anybody would like any more resources, any resources on this topic as far as, huh?
From and if anybody would.
Oh, yes. If anybody would like any more information as far as resources on human trafficking, volunteer organizations, please reach out to me. We do have a couple here in Arizona that I'm sure would love to have your help. It's happening in our own backyard. So keep our eyes open. If you see something, say something, and look out for one another. Yes.
Absolutely.
Thank you for coming on, Jeremy. I really appreciate it.
Really, thank you for having me.
That's a somber topic, so I will sign out with that is your it girl and reach out for resources if you wish. Thank you, Jeremy.
Thank you.